All right, so we are ready for Ecclesiastes chapter 2. Just a short quiz to start with. Who wrote the book of Ecclesiastes? Probably Solomon. What's another name? What's the Hebrew name? Do you remember? We had it up on the board. It's kind of hard to say. Qoheleth. Qoheleth means the teacher or the preacher. That's how he refers to himself in this book of the Bible. And we went through all of chapter 1 the last time, and we all came away from it ready to drown our sorrows in a bucket of raspberry ripple. Maybe Rocky wrote, I don't know. So tonight we're ready to move on with chapter 2. I will say that if you're watching on YouTube and this is your first time, a couple things. First of all, know that this is a part of a series. Chapter 1 is right here in YouTube as well. And if you want to make sure that you know everything that goes on here on the James Sayers YouTube channel, which is ridiculous, there's a little red triangle down in the bottom corner. I guess it's probably over there, this way, that says subscribe. If you click that, you'll be notified anytime I do a trick. So we'll be glad to have you here for that. All right, Ecclesiastes chapter 2. I said to myself, come now, I will test you with pleasure to find out what is good. But that also proved to be meaningless. Laughter, I said, is madness. And what does pleasure accomplish? I tried curing myself with wine and embracing folly, my mind still guiding me with wisdom. I wanted to see what was good for people to do under the heavens during the few days of their lives. I undertook great projects. I built houses for myself and planted vineyards. I made gardens and parks and planted all kinds of fruit trees in them. I made reservoirs to water groves of flourishing trees. I bought male and female slaves and had other slaves who were born in my house. I also owned more herds and flocks than anyone in Jerusalem before me. I amassed silver and gold for myself and the treasure of kings and provinces. I acquired male and female singers and a harem as well, the delights of a man's heart. I became greater by far than anyone in Jerusalem before me. In all this, my wisdom stayed with me. I denied myself nothing my eyes desired. I refused my heart no pleasure. My heart took delight in all my labor, and this was the reward for all my toil. Yet when I surveyed all that my hands had done, and what I had toiled to achieve, everything was meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Nothing was gained under the sun. Okay, so let's talk about everything that Solomon tried on for size. Again, he's trying to find meaning, he's trying to find purpose, satisfaction, something that really lasts. Qoheleth has pursued a lot of different things. Let's go through and make a list here together. Let's go back to the top there. I said to myself, come now, I will test you with pleasure. The Hebrew word you don't care about, but it means gladness. The old-timey dictionary word is mirth. You know mirth? M-I-R-T-H. It's sort of the idea behind this word is fun for fun's sake. I'm going to go to a lagoon all day, every day for a month, and I'm going to see if I have some fun. I'm not going to do any work. I'm just going to play, and it's just going to be fun. I'm going to buy all the cotton candy and all the Dole Whip and all of the whatever at the beer garden that I want. I'm just going to have a good time. And fun for fun's sake brought him what? I think that is maybe the theme of Ecclesiastes. If it has a sound that's what a waste. What a waste of time. It was empty. Pleasure didn't bring him satisfaction. What did he say there down towards the end? I denied myself nothing my eyes desired. I refused my heart no pleasure. Okay? That sounds like some of you when you go to, guys, you go to Home Depot. Ladies, you go to the fabric store. Or you're going shoe shopping, purse shopping. You're going to Trader Joe's or World Market down in whatever your place is. You go in and you just get whatever you want and you throw it in the cart. Pleasure, happy. Oh, I love doing this. It's so much fun. Ugh, I have all this crap. I have all this stuff in my house. I can't even move. Pleasure for pleasure's sake was empty. Okay? What's the next thing on his list there? Pleasure was meaningless. Laughter. Going to Wise Guys. Watching Comedy Central. Listening to comedians. Watching ridiculous movies. Watching Tommy Boy over and over again. Or whatever your movie happens to be. He says it's madness. It's folly. It didn't really do anything. It's fun to laugh for a little while, but it doesn't stick. What does pleasure accomplish? I tried cheering myself with wine and embracing folly. Okay? For some people, that is a go-to for trying to have a nice time. A glass or two or three or four. Whole box of wine, jug of wine.
Magnum. I don't know what we're talking about.
Wine can be a nice experience, but in the end, all you have is empty bottles. What?
Never mind, Cody.
Doesn't say anything about beer
We're going to include that under the general umbrella of food and wine are empty and meaningless. MGD, a plate of bacon, meaningless. Bourbon infused bacon, bacon infused bourbon, either direction, meaningless. Yeah.
All is bad.
Empty, meaningless. Do you remember the Hebrew word that keeps showing up here again and again? The word is hebel, but do you remember what it literally, physically means?
Vapor.
Mist, vapor that dissolves. That's the word he keeps using.
What's it called?
Hebel, hebel. A chasing after the wind. Food and wine didn't do it for him. I'm sure it tasted good and it was a great party, but the next day you got to clean it up and deal with the consequences. He talks in verse 4 about architecture, design and building. You know, that's one of the things that Solomon is known for. Solomon's temple, the other things that he built. He was a big builder all during his reign in Jerusalem. And it's nice to have your name on a building, designed by, over there in the cornerstone. But ultimately, that really didn't bring him any satisfaction. He talks in verses 5 and 6 about line 4, planting vineyards, making gardens and parks, planting fruit trees, and then groves of flourishing trees. He's big into landscaping and horticulture, all sorts of fruits. I'm assuming that as the king of the country, and he's got visitors who come from all over the world, that they bring him things, and he probably has a little exotic garden. People coming from Africa and Asia to see his wisdom and his wealth. What's after gardening and horticulture that brought nothing except for raking leaves and culling fruit?
Male and female slaves.
Male and female slaves, and those born to them in his house. The last time I taught through this, for some reason I didn't put that in the list. Maybe because, we look at that and say, well, that's kind of really not all right. In Solomon's time, to have slaves who were either prisoners of war, or to purchase slaves who were probably already foreigners, that really wasn't seen as an evil thing. They're house servants. They're treated like, many of them treated like part of the family. But he would have had many servants as the king. One of the commentaries that I was looking at earlier today said something about the hundreds of people that it would have taken to support his home and his palace. And the amount of food that would have taken, that really is the next thing. And you've got all these servants and slaves, all these attendants, all of these ministers of this and that. They've got to be fed. And so the next thing is cattle breeding. He's collecting herds and flocks, more animals, more livestock than anybody has seen before, because it takes a huge number of them every day just to feed his administration. Not to mention his family, especially if you think that this is old dumb Solomon, who has 300 wives and 700 concubines, plus all of their kids. He's having a massive barbecue every day just to get everybody a bite to eat. Let's see, property, silver and gold, and the treasure of kings and provinces. I don't know if I just came up with this on my own, if I studied this the last time, but I've written down here not just treasure, but also like artworks, sculptures, statues. Again, gifts that have come from other royalty trying to make alliances. He's got all these beautiful things he's collected. Rooms full of them. He never goes in there. He's not like Prince John from the Robin Hood, the Disney thing, where he's got his bags of gold in his bed with him, and he's counting his coins all the time just to make himself happy. He's got all that stuff, and it doesn't bring him any pleasure. What's after that? Singers.
And harem.
Yeah. If somebody doesn't have an NIV, what do you have after male and female singers?
Concubines.
Concubines?
And the pleasures of men, many concubines.
Okay, the pleasures of many concubines. Okay, so some of the scholars are not exactly sure. It's not clear what the real word is and what it means, but kind of going along in the theme of where he's been, that seems like the logical answer. He's got all these singers around. If you believe that Solomon is the one who wrote the Song of Songs, one of the things that shows up in this Hebrew erotic love poem is these choirs who, they sing their part. I sort of imagine Whoopi and the nuns piping in there with some of their kind of deals. But he loves good music. He's got choirs that sing on command for him, and he's also got this harem. He's got a house full of concubines who will attend to his every desire, his every need. we'd probably believe it is really a harem because of that comment there, the delight of a man's heart. So that's pretty sexist and judgmental of us to assume that's all he thinks about, but maybe it is. He did have 1,000 women in his life, so it seems in keeping.
And their children.
And their lovely children. I became greater by far than anyone in Jerusalem before me. Okay, so you look at that list: pleasure, laughter, food and wine, architecture, landscaping and gardening, slave owning, cattle breeding and ranching, treasure and art collecting, music and hot chicks everywhere. Is there anything that you can? The only thing that he doesn't mention is muscle cars or motorcycles. Other than that, it's pretty much the same list that many guys would write right now.
And the herds and flocks, it must have been camels.
He probably had the fastest camel.
Probably the fastest horses from Arabia, I'm assuming. Fast horses, big camels.
It's good to be a king.
I just can't wait. There you go. Tom T should be right here singing for us. There is nothing under the sun that he could have imagined wanting that he didn't get. And what is the summary of all of it?
Everything was meaningless.
No satisfaction, no lasting pleasure. It's good for a moment. It's a lot of fun when you're in it.
No contentment.
The desire is unsatisfied. I've shared the story before. In my last ministry in Indiana, the senior pastor had written a Bible study, and he really talked pretty well about that kind of craving. The little story that he told is that, you've finished up supper, whatever it happened to be for the evening, spaghetti and salad or pot roast and potatoes or whatever, and everything's put away, the dishes are in the dishwasher, and within 10 minutes, 15 minutes of hitting the start button on the dishwasher, what are you doing? You're in the pantry. You've opened the refrigerator to see, I feel like I just need a little bit of something, just a little bit of something. And so you grab, we'll be generous, you grab a couple of cheese sticks. And you think, oh, that'll be just a little bit of fat, a little bit of protein, that will satisfy me. 10, 15, 20 minutes later, it's like, no, that was not it.
Should have had a Snickers.
So you go to the pantry, and there you find a candy bar or 2 or 3. You eat those, and in half an hour, it's like, maybe some popcorn. So you pop a thing of popcorn, throw your seasoned salt on there, sit down in front of the tube, you start, snarfing popcorn down, washing it down with whatever, and you think, a giant Diet Pepsi. And then, you realize, I'm going to have to be in bed in an hour, but that's kind of salty, and I got stuff stuck in my teeth, so maybe you go find, there's Fat Boys in the freezer. Fat Boys or popsicles or something in the freezer, and by the time you go to bed, you can't breathe. You're packed full of everything, and you still never were really content. You were never really satisfied. I think that sounds a lot like our buddy Solomon. I'm just going to keep going after whatever it is that I think is going to make me happy. And surely one of these things is going to be it. And finally get that itch scratched.
You'd think with 1,000 women he wouldn't have a problem.
I have wondered. I know one of the greatest pleasures in my life is if somebody in my family would actually spend like more than 24 seconds kind of doing this to my back. Okay, you done? No. Have you seen my back? It's a grizzly bear. Take care of it. Would you just put? I'd like to think that with 1,000 women and all of their children, that there is somebody who is going to literally scratch King Solomon's back. That's just because I'm an angry, unsatisfied dad who has an itchy back. Children. All right. So, every appetite filled as full as it could be, every desire is pursued, and while he may have enjoyed it for a moment, tasted pretty good, but now it's done, it's gone. The satisfaction doesn't last. So he kind of turns the corner there about verse 10 and a half. Verse 10 says, I denied myself nothing my eyes desired. I refused my heart no pleasure. What's the next thing say? My heart took delight in all my labor, and this was the reward for all my toil. Okay, so it seems like he thought, well, none of this stuff is just supposed to be fun for me, not just all this pleasure. That really didn't do it. So, maybe just the working towards those things, maybe I can find some satisfaction in that. And what does he say in verse 11? Yet when I surveyed all that my hands had done, buildings built, farms cleared, ranches, all the stuff that he's done, what I had toiled to achieve, everything was meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Nothing was gained under the sun. Under the sun, under the heavens, there's nothing on the earth that can bring real meaning and purpose to life. If you believe that you'll find what you really need, you won't find it in any of those places. But what is it that we generally try to do when we try to find some happiness or some satisfaction, some meaning and purpose in life? Where do we usually go first? This list. Hey, I just have a good time, man. I just want to relax. I'm going to drink. I'm going to eat. I'm going to drink, smoke, and chew, and date women who do. I'm gonna go and do whatever, because I think that's what's really going to make me happy.
Not one single nap in.
No naps, no resting.
How did he nap when he's got all this going on? He doesn't have time for a nap.
He has slaves.
True. Who are probably running his kids back and forth to school. That's my guess.
Making themselves come and go.
Yeah.
And all the other kids in the neighborhood too.
If you believe that you're going to find what you really need in life, you really should learn and live. Remember, that's our phrase that pays for the book of Ecclesiastes. We want to learn and live from his experience. We don't want to ram our head into the same wall. We don't need to.
Everything else, so you have to mostly learn that for yourself. You rarely learn from somebody else's mistake.
That may be true, but man, that is a painful way to go.
But how many of us have said to our kids, I want you to learn from my mistakes?
It doesn't happen.
We want our kids to learn from our mistakes.
Well, you did it. You did it, Mom. You did it, Dad. Like, I know, and I have paid for it for the last 30 years. Pay attention to me. Yeah.
Just point the finger back.
It's different
Yes,
now.
So let me remind you, we talked about this last week, that the book of Ecclesiastes is a part of Old Testament Hebrew wisdom literature. It's poetic writing, it's truth that is packaged in a way that we want to read it and we can understand it. Job, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Songs are the 5 books of of wisdom literature in the Old Testament. And really, probably one of the main themes in all 5 of those books, all of wisdom literature, is it is easier to learn and live than it is to live and learn. In living and learning, you have to try to bust through every doorway and every wall on your own. Learning and living is going, I just saw what Steve did there. Boy, that must have hurt. I'm not going to do that.
You stupid.
I'm going to let him make the bad choices and just kind of sit back here and figure out what is going to hurt and what won't hurt. Living and learning is really where most of us are. But learning from the mistakes of others and from the successes of others. I mean, let's just not pin it on all the dumb things that Steve does. Let's find the ways that he's had some success. He married very well.
Yes.
Well, that
Okay? Okay? We want to look at the successes and the failures of other followers of Jesus around us, other God-honoring people, and we want to learn from them. Now, when we come to God's Word, we don't just want to go, I wonder what he means by that, and then go off and do our own thing. We should really try to figure out what it means so we don't have to go through the painful experience as well as the consequences and could potentially the eternal consequences that can come from those things. It is better to learn and live than to live and learn. By the time we get done with Ecclesiastes, you're going to be able to quote that to me. It is better, it is easier, it is more righteous to learn and live than to live and learn. Amen?
Amen.
Amen.
The consequences of sin isn't immediate either. You know,
Yes.
when you screw up, the consequences ain't immediate.
My sainted mother-in-law says, if the consequences of sin were more immediate, there'd be a lot less sin.
Yes.
Sorry.
So, any other deep thoughts before we move on? Okay, you had your chance. Verse 12. Then I turned my thoughts to consider wisdom, and also madness and folly. What more can the king's successor do than what has already been done? I saw that wisdom is better than folly, just as light is better than darkness. The wise have eyes in their heads, while the fool walks in the darkness. But I came to realize that the same fate overtakes them both. Everybody dies, nobody gets out alive.
Right.
Then I said to myself, the fate of the fool will overtake me also. What then do I gain by being wise? I said to myself, this too is meaningless. For the wise, like the fool, will not be long remembered. The days have already come when both have been forgotten. Like the fool, the wise too must die. Okay. This kind of feels like one step deeper, farther off of the cliff, on down into the pit of despair. We were just talking about all the fun we had, all the things that we experienced. It was pretty good, but, it really didn't last. And now it's like, okay, let's look at wisdom and folly. Madness and whatever. I think maybe if you're going to try to put this in a category, this is not just about your intellectual smarts. This is not just about the ability to make a good choice. I think maybe that in some of this there's a little bit of psychology as well when he's talking about madness and folly. Obviously, if you look at the book of Proverbs, which Solomon also put together, over and over and over and over again, he talks about how much it is better to be wise than to be a fool. Okay, when we talk about somebody being a fool, we're mostly thinking about dumber than a sack of hammers. They just make bad choices all the time. They just kind of yuck all the way through life. They're just not with it. Okay? In the Old Testament, to be a fool is not so much just, it's not just mental deficiency or intellectual deficiency, the inability to make good choices. It's about a moral kind of a thing. The wise person follows God. Solomon quotes more than one occasion in the book of Proverbs that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Getting right with God is your best and smartest move you will ever make. To reject God, to not follow Him, really is the dumbest move you can make. And it shows that you're not just, but you're also spiritually deficient as well. You're wicked, corrupted. Okay? Because anybody who has half a brain has to recognize that following God's path is absolutely the better, healthier, safer, more righteous choice. Wisdom is better than folly. No matter how depressed he is when he says this, it is true. Light is better than darkness. But when you get down to verse 14, what does he say? About the person walking in the light and wisdom and the person walking in the dark and foolishness. What happens to both of them?
They die.
They die.
Everybody dies. Everybody is going to end up with the same fate. Highest, mightiest person, lowest, slowest person, both die. Kind of makes me think about that account in the New Testament where Jesus talks about the rich man and Lazarus. The rich man's got every possible benefit. Lazarus has got nothing. The dogs come and take care of his wounds. And what happens to them? They both die the same night. Okay? It just happens. Death comes regardless of what they understand. They fade and pass away. I think it's in verse 15 that he has a little bit of realization about his mortality. So I'm going to die. I'm supposed to be really wise. I have all this wealth and power and privilege. But I'm going to die. And so, what was the point? What was the point of being smarter than everybody else? Having the ability to make good judgments and discernments. I'm still going to die. And what's going to happen if I die? Nobody's going to remember me. Something that a lot of people really struggle with. Like, what's my legacy? What are people going to remember about me and because of me? What kind of lasting impact am I going to have? I'm this smart and I had this much money and I did all these kinds of things for people, but do I get a park named after me? Is there a race named after me? Is there a bridge or a monument? For most of us, the only monument we get is about this big in granite on the ground. Just our name, numbers, and a dash. Oh, James, you're really encouraging me. It's so uplifting. Just going to go home and eat worms. If I'm going to die, then what good is wisdom in the long run? It doesn't prolong my life. Maybe a little. It can't keep death away forever. So why bother with gaining wisdom?
He may have improved somebody else's life for a short time in futility by being wise.
I believe that if this is Solomon, that there's at least one little baby who grew up to be an adult, who because he had the chance to grow up because Solomon was wise. In addition to probably many others. So, if everybody dies, why bother? Let's press on. So, I hated life. And we would read that and go, huh, really? It's pretty hard to see that. I hated life because the work that is done under the sun was grievous to me. All of it is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. I hated all the things I had toiled for under the sun, because I must leave them to the one who comes after me. And who knows whether that person will be wise or foolish, yet they will have control over all the fruit of my toil into which I have poured my effort and skill under the sun. This too is meaningless. So my heart began to despair over all my toilsome labor under the sun. For a person may labor with wisdom, knowledge, and skill, and then they must leave all they own to their moron kids. I mean, to another who has not toiled for it. This too is meaningless and a great misfortune. What do people get for all the toil and anxious striving with which they labor under the sun? All their days, their work is grief and pain. Even at night, their minds don't rest. This too is meaningless. A person can do nothing better than to eat and drink and find satisfaction in their own toil. This too I see is from the hand of God, for without him, who can eat or find enjoyment? To the person who pleases him, God gives wisdom, knowledge, and happiness. But to the sinner, he gives the task of gathering and storing up wealth to hand it over to the one who pleases God. This too is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Okay. We looked at pleasure. We've talked about wisdom. Now we're looking a little more intently at work. Now, in the previous section, he mentioned his labor and his toil, I think probably in connection with the striving after good, fun, pleasurable things. Now he's just talking about hard labor, the work that it takes, the skill that it takes to build your little own empire. There's a couple reasons he gives that all of those things, work, toil, effort, skill, labor, are meaningless. What seems to be the big deal to him? What's the real sticking point about all of it? It's gonna go to somebody else. And you know what?
They're not going to appreciate it.
They're not gonna appreciate it. They haven't worked at it. It's just gonna get dumped into their lap at the reading of the will. You probably have seen, especially if you grew up in a little town, or maybe not a tiny little town, but in smaller places where there is a family who established a business and they worked like dogs. They were aces at customer service. They went the extra mile for all their customers. From before sunup to after sundown, they were slaving away at their store, and they built it into something that was really great. And maybe a son or two or a daughter or two worked with them, and in that second generation, it became maybe even greater, bigger, more successful. They bought another site. But it seems like pretty often when it goes to generation number 3, it all just kind of falls apart, because all the grandkids are interested in is, where's my share of the inheritance? Where's my cut? I don't want to have to be in the store. I don't have to change any tires or stock any shelves or dig any ditches or what. I don't want to have to do any of the work. I just want the frosting. You've seen that? Where a great little family company goes right down the drain because of selfish, greedy kids who don't care.
You're seeing it with all the farmland right now. All that farmland that I grew up around here, it's all going to houses and developments and stuff like that, because the grandkids are saying, I don't want nothing to do with this.
It is pretty hard to own 400 acres, which you would probably make some money on, but right now, bang, you could turn it over for $1 million.
Developer comes and says, yeah, I want to put condos in.
Okay.
Gone.
What do you
Okay,
think?
so we've seen it. That was Solomon's big concern too. I'm going to put together this amazing kingdom. I have worked. I've been in multiple meetings for my whole administration. We have been through difficult times. We have made hard decisions. We have gone to war. There's been bloodshed to make some of these things a reality. And when I die,
Who cares?
it's going to my son. It's going to go to my daughter. Hopefully it'll go to my daughter.
Go alone.
That wouldn't have been the case in Solomon's time. That didn't happen. The oldest got a double share, and you only got it if you were a boy. Girls don't get inheritance. Sorry, the world's unfair. Okay, so the big concern is all this stuff that I have worked for. I mean, I've killed myself putting this together. I'm going to turn it over to the next generation, and they may be a fool. Work is hard. It takes all day. It is backbreaking. It is probably the one thing that jumped out at me more this time than before is which line is it? Come on. I know I read it. Even at night too, their minds do not rest. It's not just the pain of work and the drudgery of work. You got to lay there at night thinking, well, how am I going to fix this problem? What are we going to do about this? I can't get anybody to work. How am I going to hire somebody? We got this big bill coming. What am I? It's 100 days till Christmas. Am I ready for... all those things that go through your mind. It keeps you up, or it wakes you up in the middle of the night, first thing in the morning. And I'm going to, with all of this work, all this pain, all this effort, and I don't take any of it with me. There's no monument. There's not a way to transfer my wealth to heaven. I'm going to do all this, and I'm going to hand it over to somebody who may not care at all. They may ruin all of it. Oh, this too is meaningless. Work stinks. It's meaningless. All of that effort. But when he gets to verse 24 and 25 and 26, it's like, oh, there's a little glimmer of light, a little sparkle of something good. He starts crawling out of the pit that he has jumped into. If pleasure doesn't last and work doesn't last, what can a person do? Where does he say they can find satisfaction and meaning? Okay. Everything is from the hand of God. He starts out in verse 24 by saying, it's what we usually misquote, eat, drink, and be merry. I mean, we think that's biblical. That's actually Shakespeare, I think. Here it is, eat and drink and find satisfaction in work. Do your job. Enjoy what you have. Don't worry so much about your legacy that you're leaving. Find the good results from your labor. You've got a little bit of money. You can go do some traveling. You can buy a motorcycle. You can get a hot tub. Whatever it is that you want to do as a result of your hard work, just go ahead. He says not everybody can do that. Those pleasures, eating, drinking, being satisfied with your work, all of that is a gift from God. Those are simple things. I mean, we'd like for him to include family in there because we live in Utah and families are forever irritating. I mean, forever blessings. There's an old Shaker hymn, which is one of my favorites. 'Tis the gift to be simple, 'tis the gift to be free. 'Tis the gift to come down where we ought to be, and when we find ourselves in the place just right, 'twill be in the valley of love and delight. When true simplicity is gained, to bow and to bend we shan't be ashamed. To turn will be our delight, till by turning we come round right. God is the source of simple pleasures. Food, drink, grace, the beauty of nature, children, grandchildren especially, friendship. God gives wisdom and knowledge and happiness to the ones who seek Him. What they strive to do is to please God. If we're trying to please God with our lives, God gives us those simple pleasures. But the sinner, the one who is not interested in what God has to say, he will work and slave, and in the end, he's going to hand it all over to somebody else. Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, guys, I got bad news. None of it's going with you. It's going to go into the hands of some other goofball who may destroy your company and your reputation. It's better in the long run to work to please God in the first place. I think that's really the takeaway from chapter number 2. It is better to just look to seek to please God, and He takes care of the simple things: food, drink, pleasure, and work, those kinds of things. He'll give them to us. We got to put Him first. Deep thoughts, probing questions, smart remarks. What do you think? Do you agree with him?
Yeah, I mean, that's no matter what you do in life, the worldly things are stuck here when you pass on. Nothing comes with you,
You know, there's this saying, hearses don't have trailer hitches. I've actually seen some pictures of hearses with like a U-Haul on the back of them. I think maybe just to prove that point wrong. But I'm pretty sure that they were not headed to heaven. That may have just been all the flowers they needed to carry.
about the guy who wanted to bring gold.
Yeah, there's this old preacher story that this incredibly wealthy man was let know by God that his time was running short. It was just going to be a matter of a few days before he was going to stand before the throne of God. He'd only worried about money, so he said, "Well, can I bring some of my accumulation with me?" Like, no, that's not the way this works. You don't get to bring anything. Please, please, please. Can I just bring one suitcase full to heaven? Like, all right, let me check with my supervisor. But yes, you can bring one suitcase. So he liquidated everything, turned it into bars of gold, stuck it in the suitcase, and the instructions were, bury this with me when I die. So he shows up in heaven. He's got his suitcase full of his entire life's treasures there. And so the gatekeeper, who may or may not be Peter, says, "All right, I'm going to need to see what you've got in there." He's like TSA. "Can you open your bag for me?" He would see what's in there. And so he unzips the case, and there's all of this, incredible glowing golden bars. And here it is, everything I worked for. And the guy says, "What'd you bring pavement for?"
My favorite is the woman that was talking to her girlfriend, and her husband passed away, and he's always said, "I'm taking all my money with me. I want my money with me. Put it in the casket with me. I want my money with me." So at the funeral, her girlfriend's there, and she says, "Did you put all the money in this casket?" She said, "Yeah, I wrote him a check."
Okay, friends. You are ready for Ecclesiastes 3. If you want to read ahead, you can. Or if you just need to listen to an old album, you'll get the same experience. You'll know when you read the words. Okay? We will wrap things up. Thanks so much for being here. if you want to, you can go back and do Ecclesiastes 1 again if you need to get caught up. Have a great experience in life now.